Pleasure once again to have you joining us on the More People Podcast. I'm your host today, Andrew Fitzmaurice, joined by Phil Wright, creative marketing guru. Is that the right way to describe you, Phil?
Something like that. I'm not sure whether guru is the right word, but yeah, something like that.
So we share a lot of clients in the same space, which is why you're here. But for people who aren't familiar with who you are, tell us a bit about who you are, what you do, who you work for, your background, Phil.
So I'm the MD from WrightObara. We're a creative marketing agency and we specialise in home and garden sector. So as you say, we share a lot of similar clients in that garden sector especially. So yeah, that's where the synergy comes in. But we also host a podcast, so The Underground, which is aimed at the garden sector. But it's a business podcast, much like this.
Yep.
So it's not a gardening podcast, but it's all about the business of the garden sector.
So you've had a lifetime in creative marketing from day one, have you?
Oh, well, no, I had a fun start. So went to university and studied architecture, realised that wasn't for me and was having far too much fun playing in bands. So I was a musician for 5 years. After that, got engaged and decided, I need a proper job. So started off as a video editor, and then that was with a small video production company that morphed into a marketing agency, and I grew with that, and here we are.
Wow. And when did the home garden sector become quite prevalent?
So we started working with two key clients, Evergreen Garden Care and Pyrex, probably about 8 years ago.
Okay.
And then about 2 and a bit years ago, we went, do you know what? We really like working with these companies and the people in the sector. So let's specialise in that. So that's, it's been about 2 years we've been focusing on home and garden.
And what sort of projects do you do then? What is a typical assignment? What do clients typically come to you to ask for help on?
We do all sorts of things. Video is my passion, but that's not the only thing that we do. We anything that requires creative input in a marketing sense. We actually hosted a webinar or presented a webinar for GMA members a couple of weeks ago, and that was all about trying to help people solve their marketing issues. And so that was really looking at all sorts of different areas about whether their products are standing out in the marketplace, their positioning's wrong, the branding slightly off, all sorts of things. And that's what we love. I think my sort of video background as an editor, and then directing and writing and scripting and all that side of things really helps with the storytelling. And that's my passion, is being able to tell creative stories and use that in a marketing sense. So, yeah.
So when we spend time in the GMA world, so the Garden Industry Manufacturers Association, of which you can be a member, the clients in that space run the whole spectrum, don't they? From enormous, very well-known household brands for the garden sector, the big names you see in B&Q or the garden centres, all the way through to some quite niche, more startup, less well-known names.
Absolutely.
I'm guessing that at one end of the spectrum, you've got monstrous levels of marketing support and very big departments, very big budgets, a lot of sophistication, right the way down to the more startups that aren't perhaps as familiar or as self-assured when it comes to knowing what they want to do.
Yeah.
Are you dealing across the whole range?
We do deal with, as we say, some of the big boys like Evergreen Garden Care, they Miracle Grow, Levington, Clear Products. Yeah, they are big, and we deal with them. But then we also deal with some of the smaller companies as well. And as you said, they need probably a little bit more hand-holding, but they don't necessarily have such deep pockets. So that's quite an interesting dichotomy that we have. But yeah, we're very keen on helping some of the smaller businesses as well, because I think, you never know where they're going to go. And actually, they're quite a lot of fun to work with, because they have that sort of open mind of, they're not really sure about where to go. And so helping them define who they are as a brand and create that story, that's a lot of fun.
Do people tend to come to you with quite defined objectives and brand guidelines and visions, or do they come to you with a a clean slate and say, Phil, over to you?
They come to us with a challenge more often than not. And the challenge quite often is something which they've gone, oh, well, we're not selling very well in X retail store. And then we'll look at that and actually try and identify why that is. Because they'll sometimes say, oh, we just need to create a different brand message, or, you know, put a different spin on things. And actually, you need to rewind a little bit and take a step back and go, oh, actually, your positioning's wrong. You think you're targeting this customer, but actually, when you look at everything that you're doing, you're way off. You're targeting someone completely different. So let's just look at how that's working.
Do you get full creative license to find the narrative, and do you get to go quite wacky, or do you have to stay quite corporate and on message?
It depends on the brand, but what we like to do is we when we're presenting ideas, creative ideas, we tend to do sort of 3 different approaches. So we'll do, well, this is very safe. This is what you would be used to seeing. And then they will do another one, which is just pushes you a little bit. And then we'll do something way over there, you know, and sometimes they'll go, well, do you know what? That is exactly what we want to do. You know, we hadn't got the courage to even think about doing something like that.
I like the word courage.
Yeah.
I like the word courage. And I guess that's part of your responsibility, or your value add, to stretch people outside their normal comfort zones.
Oh, completely. And just being able to open people's minds to what's possible, because sometimes they get so blinkered, and you can understand why, because, you know, the product marketing sort of managers or whatever, they have their portfolio of things, and they just know what, you know, they know what they know, and they know it really, really well, but they're not being exposed necessarily to all the sorts of different ways of being able to present the same message, but in different ways. So yeah.
And fashions and trends move on as well. So how much have things changed over the course of your 8 or so years working in this space?
A lot. Sustainability is becoming more and more of a key driver within the space. But yeah, I mean, creatively, it changes all the time. So yeah, trying to stay up with that. But then I have to say, the garden industry doesn't necessarily move with trends in quite the same way as some other sectors. So yeah, we're all right.
So the fashions are changing, the way to promote it, the delivery methods are changing. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we're doing video as we speak, as are lots of people, and the accessibility of video and podcasting is so much easier than it perhaps was a long time ago. You've got the podcast. How and why did you get into it?
Well, so I think rather naively we got into podcasting, and thinking it was a way of promoting our agency. And, you know, it was going to be all about the listeners, the numbers of people listening. And that was going to be our big moment. And actually, what we found is it's all about the people. It's all about the people coming onto the podcast, that networking, who they're talking to. We do have listeners, and we're very grateful for them. And, you know, we have a core of people who religiously listen each week, but then we have people who dip in, you know, well, that's a really interesting topic for me, and they'll dip into those things, and that's great. One of the things which I really enjoy is being able to celebrate the garden sector. You know, it's seeing the different, there's so many different facets to it, and we talk to so many interesting people, and I just love talking to people and getting to hear their stories. And really, it's just a great way of being able to really understand the different parts of the sector.
We've had so many different guests, and every single episode you're scratching an itch and digging deeper below the surface in things that perhaps you haven't even thought of before. Or if it's true that we might have thought of it, the nature of the audience, particularly if they're not specialised in this particular function, they just don't know what they don't know. So where do we think the trends might go in the future? What do you see the garden manufacturing space looking like in 5 years' time?
I think there's going to be greater emphasis on sustainability. Obviously, we've got you've covered the peat-free issue. I think that's going to be resolved within 5 years. So we won't be calling it peat-free compost. It'll just be compost. And that's quite a big deal in the sector.
What about the demographics? I know we've been to lots of different trade shows where perhaps more with hope and optimism than anything else, talking about how many young people might be getting more interested in growing and gardens and balconies. You know, it's not just about the big garden if they have small spaces, and how you can cram garden accessories and plants and other affiliated products into a small space. But younger people being more interested in the sector, I think is a massive plus.
Oh, I think definitely. And I think, the interest in houseplants has been tremendous. And I was talking to Peter Burks about this. Peter Burks from the Garden Centre Association, and he was saying, that the young people who are buying the houseplants, they don't just buy the plant because they want that look. And that's been tremendously successful for garden centres, and can see that expanding. I went to a really interesting high street store, which was a houseplant store. It's called Not Another Jungle. You may have heard of them. They've got a couple of stores, one in Northampton and one in Bedford. Amazing shop, and I can just see that those type of businesses doing really well. And I was a little bit surprised that the little dobbies didn't take off in that way, because I think there is a room in the market for that type of store. So more urban setting, where people don't necessarily, we're so used to garden centres being out of town and having car parks and then just loading stuff into the boot. But there are lots of people who live in cities, don't have access to a car. So being able to go around to a store where they can literally carry things home, I think it's really important.
Yeah, agree. There's definitely opportunity there to leverage those customers for more.
Absolutely.
And the most exciting or interesting things you're working on at the moment?
Oh, wow. So we're doing some really great work with a couple of brands. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but one is around messaging, how to change the way they're positioning their product to really drive home the key benefits of the product. So that's one of the things that we're really excited about. And we've got another one that is looking at their whole range for 2026 and how they're going to reposition it, because I think at the moment they're not quite hitting the mark.
And when we see that come to fruition, come to light, will it have the WrightObara hallmark?
Absolutely.
Look and feel?
It'll definitely. Both of them are very different, but both of them will have a real creative bent to it, and I think you'll look at it and go, that is surprising and memorable, and that's what we want.
And you're not shoehorning your musician skills over the top of this, are you?
Well, no, only if they do a video.
Look forward to seeing it, Phil.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.